I'm good.
Emily Moore, it is already way too much fun sharing time and space with you, even if it is virtually. And quick turnaround on this, just for some fresh thoughts on this time of the major championship season in men's and women's tennis. Also, significant astrological time of the year. I have definitely felt I cannot always articulate if it aligns with certain lunar cycles, just some serious dreaming and deep nights of sleep. Otherwise, daytime, some prowling pugilistic energies. I don't know if you felt the same. We'll talk about your lived experience, and it's really a treasure for me in this space to talk to someone who has a love for tennis and knows that it is something at least a little bit worthwhile. It's popular in alternate media these days to bash on sports, and granted, this is individual sport. It's sport nonetheless. It's J.P. Morgan Chase, and places like that are and Moderna, and these are the corporate entities sponsoring events like our beloved U.S. Open. And even still, let's just go first word when you think of the men's champion and the women's champion. So a word apiece as your introduction, and then we'll take them from there. When you think of Carlos, what do you think of? One word.
Satisfying.
And Sabalenka.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant for both of them. If I had to
No,
pick,
no, no, no. Just for Carlos.
all right, just for Carlos, it's the hair man. It's not a word. I'm sorry. It's a sentence. It's the hair man. And for Sabalenka, um, mentally tough. She got it. She figured right. Like it's just all the finals she went to this year and didn't win were all mental breakdowns. I mean, a little less
Yep.
than Madison Keys and Australian Open. Madison was just playing out of her shoes.
She went on a heater in the
Yeah, she
third,
went on a
which was
heater,
cool.
and there's
So.
nothing you can do about that. But some of the finals in the Masters 1000s, and some of the finals in the final in the French Open, certainly, and whatever it is, like mental, mental sort of deconstruction on
Yeah.
her part. But yeah, so just so everybody knows, before we push record, we practically recorded a whole other episode that it's too bad we weren't recording. Some of
Yes.
it was very interesting.
Instant regret. Instant regret.
But I'm happy to be here with you and to talk about tennis. And I will say a couple of things. I'm noticing it's weird because I stopped when I say this, when I say I stopped caring about this, I don't mean that I don't care about tennis and I don't care about the conversation anymore. But years ago, I was really like pushing hard to try and get people not so much to love tennis, though. Like tennis is becoming more popular than it ever has been, so like I would have been good with that too. But just to notice how good tennis was at sort of showing us what's going on in the larger world, like a miniature version of what was going on, and there was like this almost like a precognitive or predictory factor about whatever's going on in tennis is going to happen somehow, like in the larger world. And and at a certain point, I kind of stopped doing that for two reasons. Like I felt like I had made my point, and even if like it hadn't gone quite the way I wanted to, but also just like I was kind of on to other ideas. But this year at the U.S. Open, I felt like everybody else has started to notice the thing that I've been noticing for at least 10 years or more and been talking about. And when I first started pulling tennis into the conversations, like I'm sure I mentioned that I liked tennis probably the first time that I was ever interviewed back in 2016. But I'd say it was in like 2017 ish that I really started pulling tennis in on a more regular basis. And in the beginning, people didn't like it. Like maybe they liked it the first time I did it, but then like they'd be like, "Oh, this stupid bitch always talks about tennis, and it's annoying." And then now people request for me to talk about tennis, right? So that's been going on for a couple of years. That people
Oh,
who,
brilliant.
right, there's been some people who've developed an interest in tennis from listening to me talk about it, even though I don't quite talk about it as much as I did it for a while. And then now people will request it. But I felt this year, I cannot tell you how many people I know who don't normally watch or care about tennis came to me and said, seems like there's a lot of interesting things going on at the US Open.
Really?
Right. And so we're like at wanted to wanted to know my thoughts on it, wanted a deeper explanation of why this was significant or not significant or whatever it is. So that sort of whatever that energy is has spilled over from just people who are naturally interested in both tennis and sort of conspiracies, or our new word we've decided is alternate media type of issues or whatever, right? Instead of alternative, people who happen to just be interested in both can see the parallel. People now who are just interested in one or the other, right? Obviously, like the tennis world got sort of initiated into, conspiracy or alternate stuff through like the Novak Djokovic situation a couple of years ago. He's really been the Heyoka or the sacred clown, or like the person leading the vision quest of tennis into sort of alternative ideas on some levels. But now people who just don't have any interest in tennis at all, but are sort of conspiracy minded or whatever, have been asking me like about the tennis and some vice versa. So that's really cool on one level. But on the other level, it has less predictive value for me, because once everyone else can see it, then I'm not plucking at obscure threads anymore. People are just noticing the scent of the hair of the beast, right? So both things are kind of cool, right? I thought the U.S. Open in general, like, it's kind of weird. Like, in some ways, it's my least favorite slam. But there's been, yeah, in some ways it's my least favorite slam. But I thought this one was really good. I enjoyed this iteration of it. I think the reason it's my least favorite slam is because I think we sometimes get the lowest standard of performance because people are tired and injured and things like that. Some years, and then also it's
mentally exhausted. Obviously,
it feels the most highly politicized and the most highly like sort of Hollywood. There's always celebrities at tennis matches, even not Grand Slams. Even if you just go to a 500 or Masters 1000, there's always celebrities there. But in New York, it's kind of like going to the Met Gala or something. Like, you're waiting to see which celebrities kind of show up, and so that for me, because I know so much of that is just like propaganda and mind control and whatever. Like, it's fun for me to analyze it, but it also like does sometimes take away a little bit from just the sheer like joy of the athletic aspect of it.
Did you see just quickly? Did you see Ben Stiller's interaction with Novak Djokovic?
I didn't.
Ben Stiller, another Jew? Is he another?
I know who Ben Stiller is.
No, is he another Jew? Is he another?
Totally Jewish, yeah.
Oh yeah. So and again, erroneous. I'm just being fresh, but his interaction with Novak was I just remember watching him and his body language. And he's like, yeah, we're making another meet the parents. You should come to the set sometime. I'm just like, that poor guy, whatever contract he signed, and then whatever 18 versions of Meet the Parents he has to record for his goal. I feel for that guy. And Novak's like, yeah. Novak was feeling for him. So, and Emily, I would certainly invite you to share any of those threads that you observed this year that were conversations with people in more shared circles of the Venn diagram for media who are new to tennis that you were discussing with them.
Sure. Real quickly before we move,
yeah.
I just want to say the other thing is, I think I also, and it's kind of, it took me a while to get here, I think I prefer natural surfaces tennis to hardcourt tennis. Grass has always been my favorite, and I used to not really love the clay, right? Like, it was probably my least favorite to watch. And then, but Nadal being for a long time my favorite player, I started obviously to watch a lot more clay court. Like, how Nadal became my favorite player was not on clay. It was the first time he beat Roger at Wimbledon, right? Like the year before he almost did. I think that was when I really started to like him. But so for me, like, I understood that he's a clay court player and that's where his excellence is. It was something in that sort of that fight, that struggle. There was something I identified in him that I really liked. But obviously, him being, a clay court maestro, I started to watch more and started to develop an understanding for why it is that he was so effective on clay and how different the points and the tactics and all of that kind of stuff are on clay. And at this point, I'd say that like grass is still my favorite. Right. I liked it a little bit better when it was a little bit faster than it is now. Right. But, I don't know that I want it so fast that Bublik is going to win everything. Right. But I do like it a little bit faster. So I think I prefer natural surfaces tennis because I just think there's more of a there's just more variables to consider. There's just a lot more, right? It's just not so predictable. Um, and then so that's part of it. And then yeah, and then just the what we've already said about the U.S. Open. So okay, now back to what you were saying about the threads. All right, let's just see for a few minutes, like the main stories that emerged from the U.S. Open this year that were about anything other than just who was winning or who was losing, were obviously the theater around Coco Gauff's serve, the the theater around Taylor Townsend and Elena Ostapenko, the theater around Carlos Alcaraz's haircut, the sort of constant is he washed up? Is he going to do it again around Novak Djokovic to a certain extent? But that's been ongoing for the last 2 years, and of course, I have thoughts about that. But I wouldn't say that was. It's this ongoing tug of war that we are at in our culture about like whether we think that older people are capable of less, or whether we don't think that it sort of plays into on some level. I'm trying to think of what the other dramatic stories were. There was the feel-good story of Venus Williams, which also gets to this age question, right? There's the only part that was involving someone who wasn't playing in the tournament was the revelation that Serena Williams is on Ozempic, which has been obvious to anybody who's been looking at her for the last year. But like, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, and then the way that became known. Are there any? What are some of the other ones? Am I missing?
I feel like you're all there.
Like those are the main ones that people who aren't tennis people became aware of.
Yeah.
During that, maybe there was like a few more like sort of arguments at the net and type of thing, but like those were the main things. So okay, so which one would you like to start with? Because I think that there's issues about all of them.
We can start with my least favorite, just because I didn't spend enough mental thought on it, which was Venus. Is, to me at some point I'm thinking you're taking a spot in the draw away from someone. I get it. You want to go out on your terms and all that, but I don't get as fired up for her. There's still plenty to like in her game and how she competed throughout all of the 20 plus years that she's been competing in women's tennis. And ladies doubles, they knocked out some great seeds along the way. So, and Leylah Fernandez is not a world beater on the doubles court. So, it was both of them making that happen, which I thought was a feat because they got to the quarters. So
a couple things. So I've been tracking the Venus story all summer, right? Like I was a little surprised to see her show up as part of the coverage team for TNT at the French Open, which my head made me think she was done, because her and Sloane Stephens both showed up there, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is like the soft way to announce that you're retired for both of you, right? Kind of thing. And so, but then I was kind of surprised to hear that Venus Williams was going to play in Washington, D.C. And when I heard that, I thought, okay, like she doesn't want to go out injured. She wants to go out on the court, which like kind of like Delpo, some people wanted. Okay, but she fucking played amazing. Like I watched that match, right? She took it to Peyton Stearns, and I was, it took me about half a set to settle in and like not be anxious watching Venus Williams, but she was still hitting the ball as hard. She was hitting the ball like harder than she was hitting it for the last couple. She hadn't played in a few years, but how she was hitting it at the end, she was serving great. Her movement was like a little bit sluggish, and you could tell she was getting winded. But I was like, oh, this is not just a farewell match. This is like she's trying to make a run for it was obvious to me within the first 30 minutes she was trying to make a run for the U.S. Open. She beat Peyton Stearns, went out in the second round, and then played again in Cincinnati. She got beat in the first round, but it like still played well enough. Like you were seeing, okay, that she's obviously training every day. That match that she lost in the first round at Wimbledon, and at US Open, was actually some of the best tennis I've seen her play in really like
Was that her first round match against Mukova? I thought. Why do I think it was second? Did she not win
first
one
round.
round? Okay.
She did not win a round.
Yeah.
She also she played with Riley Opelka in the mix. Oh, that's the other thing. There was the mixed doubles. We should address
Fucking
that.
hell.
The mixed
Oh,
the mixed
Christmas
doubles.
alive. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, right. We should address that. Okay.
The
So
exhibition.
the second set was as good of tennis as I've seen Venus play since like the last time she won Wimbledon, which I think was like in 2009, 10, or 11 or something like that, right? And like she was hitting it deep, she was hitting it hard, she was moving reasonably well. And one thing with Venus is like she never had that sort of consistency of shot. Like you always thought, okay, she could hit a winner or it could go out. But she was like hitting deep forehands that were going in over and over and over again, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a rally sometimes, which is not anything she was showing us the last few years that she competed. Right. So my feeling is that I think it's a smart move for the tournament because she is so well loved and it drives engagement. There's people who don't care about tennis but will watch when the Williams sisters play. And if we're trying to grow the popularity of tennis and make it as appealing to the public as baseball or basketball or football or whatever it is, it's important to have stars. And I think she played well enough that it didn't feel like a courtesy, right? And then when the playing doubles with Leylah Fernandez didn't come until she was out. And then Leylah Fernandez called her and asked her. Now, Leylah Fernandez is a very good doubles player. She's played doubles she used to be partners with Taylor Townsend, and she's played with other top doubles players. So she's a good doubles player. But because
I'm critical of just like things that I see in her game that are not conducive to the doubles that is going to beat Siniakova and Townsend or
correct, right? But with an appropriate partner, she does have some skills that are useful, and then also her attitude is like number one, right? Likable. She does it. It's not all about her, but it's enough about her that she has a magnetic kind of personality. And she just she took the risk. She called Venus. They played incredibly well, and to the point that they're considering becoming doubles partners for the rest of the year. And maybe Venus will travel to wherever Leylah is playing, and they'll play doubles too, or something. They're having that conversation, right? Yeah. So I think that I was a little worried that it was going to be embarrassing for Venus, and it definitely wasn't. So it's a question of, does she want to go out feeling like I played good tennis, right, and just be done, or does she want to ride this wave and see where it takes her, which could be back to more injuries and not playing well. We don't know that, right? Guys thought, well, what if some people just don't want to stop a thing they love, like they just like it and they're not as concerned with winning. Maybe she should just play doubles. Like maybe she could literally be on the tour for most of the year playing doubles and not risk hurting herself, not right, because it's not as intense amount of running and things like that, and do that. And then she's a draw. People come to see Venus. It's good for the sport, and she gets to do it, right? So I'm kind of like, I don't know. I feel like it was cool. I feel like it was good. I don't feel like she took a spot from anybody who had a chance to win anything. Right? Like, I don't feel like it's the same thing as like the controversy around the mixed doubles. And by doing this, did they cheat other people who deserved to have their spot out of a space? Now, I do think that like people in the media, particularly like Andy Roddick and others, go overboard in saying that like she should just be able to have whatever she wants. And if she wants to come out and play when she's 200, I think that's a little far. But I think that it was appropriate to give her the wild card at Washington, D.C. That was appropriate at a 500 early in the summer tournament. And she put up the goods and earned the wild cards she got the rest of the summer and came through on them at the U.S. Open. It was one of the most entertaining matches of the tournament, was that match against Mukova.
For sure. And Mukova is someone I generally encourage to do well because she's someone with an all-court game. And if that's okay if it's not perfected in every respect, it's still a threat to anyone. She's in that Osaka match all day, and
if she could go a full year without an injury, she would be in the top 5. There's no doubt about it.
There's no doubt. And so I feel for anyone who's dogged by that injury history, because it's still a history. It's tough to go out completely fresh, especially when you're playing most weeks out of the year. And I'm happy to build this bridge to talking about Novak, because it's often an emotional support for me in best of 5 to just say, a good draw and when he does go up against Alcaraz and Yannick, everything's firing and everything's and being on the different surfaces. I always imagine that he has the better chance on clay or grass. I thought Wimbledon. I mean, the first time he played Carlos, that was his match. For him to snap his racket across the net post at 4-5 in the or 3-4 in the fifth, I knew the writing was on the wall mentally, emotionally for that. Otherwise, the triangle, we may have talked about this before, but the triangle I think I have devised is that Yannick is the only one who can consistently beat Novak. Novak is the only one who can fairly regularly beat Alcaraz, and Alcaraz is the one who can reliably beat Yannick. And for them all to know that they're playing just for each other makes a big difference because when you think about Andy Murray, and when you're talking about just what for Venus to take it to Peyton Stearns and come out in one match like that, what it would take for her to go through a week.
Sure.
Where it's not a major and you don't get every other day off or more, to say nothing of the doubles. But I mean, you remember Andy winning those, all his best of 3 matches were going 3 sets and deep into the third, and it's 3 hours. And then when he's playing 5 sets, it's coming back from 1 set, 2 sets down or whatever. And I mean, that was him with his skill and will being able to overtake people who might have skill, will, and fitness. And Novak's fitness over a week to go win a Masters tournament. I mean, he was in Miami final this year, came up against Menchik, which was, I mean, that was like running into a brick wall at that point.
Just the serving, he was just had a perfect serving lead.
Absolutely, and it's not like he's putting every ball by Novak, but just the placement and a big enough guy to, if he does get a ball back, he's doing something with it. So for sure, last year Novak being in I think it was the Shanghai final against Yannick, and went 3 full sets in that. So my assessment from what I can see is, since the skill and the will are there, the fitness, as we know, is because, I mean, for him to just start blasting and try to go for things against Carlos, knowing that, trying to get Carlos to make the mistakes by just getting another ball isn't really an option. It's a small reach, and it's a reach nonetheless. I have said that after this cycle of his life that he has spent without consuming any animal products, I think that would be an option to get some more sustenance, vitality. I don't know what that would look like for his body to adjust. You think about what it takes to digest that, that kind of food after years of not being acclimated to it. And I think there is such a thing at that age of still overtraining, because we do have, I believe, a collective Wetiko mind virus around what fitness really is, and freshness is so often neglected. And we see this, I think, you talk about injuries. The NFL is the best example of that, for what they do in the couple of weeks leading up to a season to get guys in shape. And fine, some guys are literally not in shape. Their proportions are off. Some of their speed is off. But and tennis is another beast, right? Because they play basically 11 fucking months. So that alone is a grind. I thought Novak did a great job of picking his spots with where he would play, and I thought the form was there throughout most of New York for him to take care of someone like Struff, who, even when they played, was in those rallies for most of it until whoever was forcing the issue or forcing an error there. So
Struff is like almost like a Menchik. He could have run into a problem against Struff that he. Right. So, I mean, Struff is a giant killer for sure. That was an important match. And obviously at this point, being able to take out Taylor Fritz has become one of the most consistent players, period. He's kind of like your current, your Burditch or your Ferrer or whatever, in terms of he's always going to be sort of right there. It's going to take a little bit of luck for him to push into that final situation, but you have to get past him in order to get where you're going. And that's not always easy. I'm of many minds about Novak Djokovic right now. And I have been for.
What do you think he feels? He's a Gemini. He changes his
he's
persona every day.
He's a Gemini, and I'm Gemini rising, so I can relate with some of this stuff, right? So it's been interesting and challenging to watch him for the last 2 years as a Novak fan, and I'm a late to the party Novak fan. Same. Right? Like I liked Novak a lot when he was younger because he was funny. He did the imitations of the players, and he was just like someone different, right? They were very focused on that. So I liked him when he was younger. And then for a period of years, while I never hated him or disliked him, he was disrupting Nadal for me. And so since I was a Nadal fan, like it felt like ominous, and I wasn't, but it wasn't a personal thing. I didn't hate him or anything like that. And then, eventually he won me over just with a couple of things. His absolute commitment to being the best ever. Like, he decided he was going to do that, and he did everything he needed to do that. That's super impressive. But then obviously the way he has managed for more than 20 years, being the odd man out, right? And then obviously, like, it was crystallized with the whole thing that happened around COVID and whatever, that just, this is a person who is okay to stand by himself. He doesn't have to worry. Sure, he might want people to like him or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, if he has to stand by himself to get done what he thinks needs to be got done, he's willing to do that. So there's,
and as a professional people pleaser and someone who takes it deeply personally, if someone doesn't like even the tennis ball that I fed them, and
right,
to have 20 years of
right,
most everyone not only not rooting for you,
rooting against you,
more likely than not rooting
right?
against you,
So
that would crush
So,
most of us.
so I'm a fan of his for a million reasons. Just
Yeah.
his athletic ability is impressive. The mental chess playing that he's figured out about how to beat people, because he would get beat by someone once and then come back and beat them the next time, having figured it out. But just everything. He's also become sort of an emblem for me of overcoming adversity, of overcoming people who don't like you and who doubt you, of overcoming age, of overcoming, right? All of this kind of stuff. And
And if he
so,
was an American, there'd be a statue of him in every city.
oh my God, if he was, yeah, totally, right? He'd be in, it's 100%. So it's been challenging for me to watch in the last couple of years because I want him to win, right? And I think that it's impossible that this thing that everyone's referring to as his physical decline happened like between December and January of 23-24. Because remember, he won the year-end championships at the end of November in 2023, and then he showed up in Australia not really looking like himself. So I think there's a couple of things. I think that it's probably difficult to continually find new motivation, right? To continually find new motivation, especially when Roger and Rafa are not really there in the same way, right? It's like, that's like part of the motivational diet for him. And so even though Rafa hadn't retired officially yet, it was very, very clear that Rafa was not the same Rafa. So that I think, is part of it. But I do think that and it's funny because I had this thought early last January. I don't even remember if it was during the Australian Open or just before, that he's going to get bored, and his boredom is going to lead to a decline. So he needs to find a different way of being good at tennis. And some of the thoughts that came into mind for me were obviously something possibly about diet, right? That didn't come until later. I mean, I've always thought that. Like, back when he was dominant, but still every once in a while would get beaten by someone, it was very, very clear to me that with that extra bit of protein and whatever it is, he could probably become a terrifying monster that would never be beatable. And it would, right? And that would have been impressive too, but I understand maybe boring for people who don't like him or whatever it is. So I've always thought that with the diet. As far as I understand, he's a pescatarian. He went through a period of being vegan, and now he does eat some fish and maybe even some poultry. But I think it would be interesting to see him shift his diet to something that we see people regain fitness in their 50s with new diet. They run a marathon, they do a triathlon to try a shift in diet to see what would happen. But I was thinking of the things of like trying new things. Like, there's one tennis player who I think is like, he's not really someone I necessarily root for, but I completely appreciate like what he's doing in opposition to what everyone else is doing. And that's Adrian Manarino. And Adrian Manarino drinks tequila every day, right? Adrian Manarino, it seems to, he's definitely very, very fit. Right. But he sees the geometry of the court a little bit differently. Right. He uses like almost like optical illusion. It's almost like kind of like illusion to create the same things that other people are creating with athleticism. And he seems to me the kind of like, I think he goes around and he tastes all of the things of life. Wherever he's traveling to, he goes out, he tries the drinking culture, the art culture, the whatever it is. He's a little bit more, I don't think he's like 100% focused on tennis. It's like, we're here to do tennis, but I'm going to take all these other experiences that I have. And like, it's kind of like if you are a person who designs perfume, like who comes up with a sense for perfumes, you would benefit from also being into wine tasting and whiskey tasting and all of this kind of stuff to start to refine. I feel like there's things that Djokovic could become interested in that would sort of give him a new palette to paint from as far as tennis, if he like allowed himself to do that. And I don't just mean like, he seems to want to spend time with his family, and he has lots of like business stuff and sponsorships and whatever. I'm talking about like taking up like a new interest or art or passion that sort of gives you a different viewpoint on tennis. I see that as being part of Manarino's his magic. He kind of plays tennis like a drunk person, and it works for him. Now, I don't think that's going to take him to number one in the world or winning a Grand Slam. But I think that like maybe Novak Djokovic could like try a few different sort of ways of being on the tennis court, which has to be hard when he's had so much success doing it the way he's done it. I think what he's done is just thought that like, well, I will play less. I'll preserve my body by playing less. And then I will just try to do the same things that I've always done in the lead up. And I think it just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Right. I think that I think he's in decline because he's not working as hard as he used to work, and he's not working as often. And that's 100% respectable. But if you're going to do that, you might also have to change some other things about the way you approach tennis. I think I'd like to see him do one of two things: either like bring some completely different ideas in, or see what happens if he completely dedicated himself once again. Now, it still might mean something different. He probably can't do as much playing or whatever it is, but he used to make tennis the focus of his life, and it's very obviously been not the focus for the last 2 years. And if he decided like, you know what, I want to see what happens if I put everything into Australia. And if he spent all of, take off a little time in November, spend all of December training hard, get down to Australia, play a 250 or a 500, not the week before or whatever it is, but get something going, leave your family at home, don't do so many sponsorship things, and just make it center focus. And then he can see, okay, I think he could still do it. I think he could still beat them, but he would have to make it his number one priority again. I don't think he can beat them with tennis being his third priority, which is what it feels like it is right now. And when I say that, he's earned that right. If he can be the third best tennis player in the world, making tennis his third priority, but if he wants to have that moment once again of like, I can still beat all of these guys, he's going to have to put the same work into it that they're doing.
Well said. Well, and only to add quickly. Go ahead.
One last thing I want to say.
Please.
I was at this party earlier this year that had this sound system.
I was positive you were going to say earlier this morning.
Oh, not earlier this year. I wish I was at a party earlier this morning. I have a little cold, so I wouldn't have. Right, okay, so I was at this party that had a very different kind of sound system that I've ever experienced, and it was literally creating conditions. Okay, it was creating conditions, and I had this thought that it would be really cool to open up like a fitness studio that had a sound system like this in it, and athletes could come there and use the conditions being created by the sound system to prepare themselves for the conditions that they would find on the court, right? And I was thinking about like Novak that time in Cincinnati where like he almost like was passing out in the second set, and then he came back to win it because the conditions were super oppressive, or what was going on in Cincinnati this year, right? But the conditions are so much a part of it in tennis. And we've often seen people look like they're going to keel over, they're cramping, they're this and they're that it would be really interesting to do fitness training with a sound system like this that helped you to overcome those moments of struggle in adapting to whatever either your fitness issue is or the external conditions. And then the other thing, because while I was having this experience with the sound system, I was also tripping, right? And mushrooms make your body feel a little unusual. It's like hard to sort of adapt to it sometimes, but then once you adapt to it, because your awareness is heightened, your visual acuity is heightened, it kind of mimics that like space that you can sometimes get into. Like, have you ever not felt well on the tennis court and then you push through it and then you start playing your best ever?
Yeah.
Like that's how mushrooms can kind of do that. It would be really interesting. I would love to see. No, I know this sounds batshit. I would love to see Novak Djokovic like tinker around with. He's brought so many modalities and technologies and forward-thinking nutrition things front. Like it would be really interesting to see him introduce sound, psychedelics, all of this kind of stuff into the performance space as well, right? And I don't mean it like Aaron Rodgers is doing, where he goes to South America and he has his ayahuasca trip and he thinks he's figured things out. No, I mean, like, is there an advantage that can be gained by some of these microdose states? Now, I understand he likely can't compete under that condition, although I don't know if that would be, I don't know if that's on the ban list or not. But no, this is one of the ideas. I don't know if you're familiar with like the stoned ape theory. Are you familiar with the stoned ape theory?
A little bit, but not enough to define it.
So two things: the idea that like apes found their way to psychedelic mushrooms, and then the reason that they evolved into humans and all this other stuff is because the visual acuity helped them to become very good at hunting. So they were able to provide for their group of people. It made it them appealing to women, had multiple wives, created a lot of children, and started to build up a culture sort of around this. But that also, what we think of as art and culture and all of this kind of stuff came from the headspace of these mushrooms as well, right? And so, but what I'm speaking of more is this just sort of visual acuity and being able to sort of like aim for the kill type of thing very well in that condition. I wonder what that would be like. I don't know that you want to like play your match in that condition, but I could see there being maybe some advantages to training in that condition sometimes.
Thank you for sharing your brilliant insights with me and anyone who is willing and able to listen, because you're speaking to something that I was feeling even before you delivered that particular invitation to Novak. And yes, Emily and I are available for to be hired as special coaches, special consultants, because I'm not digging the energy of his team in his box.
Correct.
Trying to tell him what the fuck to do with his grip. I understand technical changes from what we saw with someone like Coco, who is, I was gonna say mental.
Novak has perfect technique. Novak already has perfect technique on everything except for an overhead. Right.
And I haven't seen him miss one of those on a big point in a while. So I mean,
he did at Wimbledon.
Which match? In the one he lost?
The center match, I think.
The center match?
Yeah.
Well, at the very least, I was going to say at the U.S. Open, and he didn't have too many big points when it mattered. And they're not putaways. The shot itself, as you've probably been up under a ball, hopefully out of doors. That's floating, especially what they do. What people miss out on things like TV tennis is you have no fucking idea how high that ball goes.
Yeah.
And people think it's a gimme. The whole crowd groans. Fucking Chris Everett goes, "Ah!" And I'm thinking, it's been floating in the air for 5 Mississippi. You try to hit it. you look up in the stadium. I mean, this is the cliche about the bright lights. It's so literal in something like this, where you have to track that ball. And still, so it's not a smash put away for him. It's back in play. It's usually offensive. The one that Alcaraz let drop and then spun, 30 meters away from Yannick was electric in the final.
Yeah.
What you're speaking to, Emily, that I was feeling before you offered that potential avenue for him to walk down is beyond the physical.
Yep.
How would someone like that start to feel and therefore see things differently? Like you said, probably not playing under an enhanced state. What if days off of court, you are tapping into something that is more of an energetic shift that would, because it's easy for us to say, just take the rivalry even more seriously on the mental. Like I think you and I were saying offline, the evolution that someone goes through at points in their life, and an athlete's life is shorter than the entirety of their life as a man or woman. And what are the phases that you would go through that would get you to first master your body as best you can, then your mind, and then it becomes, and he's been on that path. I mean, that's why he's been willing to have a commitment to faith life. To he said he's even explored things like sound healing frequency modalities. So I feel like that lily pad is just a small step
I
away
think
for him to go.
one of the things I've noticed watching him the last 2 years is sometimes he looks off balance in a way he never used to look off balance, right? Like he used to be.
Right.
And when I was in the when like with the scenario I was talking about the sound system creating conditions, right? It was creating both like weather conditions. It was like there was heat coming off of it, there was wind coming off of it, so
Yeah.
it felt like a cool air. But it was also like it's very vibratory with electronic music, right? And trying to sort of find your balance with the constant shifting of conditions for him to be able to train at finding his balance when he's feeling a little bit off that way, that system could create a false sense of being off that he has to learn how to master.
So
Right?
I think you'll dig this being the athlete you are. I told my love, by the way, she said, have fun with you, have fun talking to your friend. I said, I think you'd be easy friends with Emily too. She like my Jordan is fast and small and therefore very dynamic and high body awareness. Because there's a very much a connection I'm seeing. I've asked other guests about this, but are you familiar with Feldenkrais, Moshe Feldenkrais? Feldenkrais
I feel like
method.
I've heard that name before,
Okay.
but I've never read that book.
So, I mean, I have several of these books here because it's become a fascination of mine. This one's called "How We Learn to Move," and they're a revolution in the way we coach and practice sports skills. And there's a lot of reference to sports like tennis, hitting a
Yep.
baseball. Where, I mean, for instance, I agree that as a tennis teaching pro, there's only one current player that I would tell any beginner, child, adult, intermediate, and say, go watch every single stroke that Novak Djokovic hits. There's no other player. Alcaraz is right there. I think
Yeah.
with most of it, he has that little hitch in his serve. Sinner gets the edge in terms of technique for the serve. A lot of the volley stuff is there. I still think Novak gets the edge in terms of volley technique. And I was just talking about you. That's perfect. Thank you, darling. Um, and let me have a sip of this, if you please. Little kombucha to spice up our talk. The cucumber jalapenos are a great one. But on the movement front, yes, how you understand different ways of how you move through space, especially responding. I mean, the eye work that's becoming very popular now, I think, is well deserved in a sport like tennis. One of the things I was just reading about is that
What?
the eye work, vision
Oh,
training.
yes. Okay.
That's a must, and I'm sure Novak has incorporated some of that. One particular dimension of training the body that I think would be extremely beneficial to him and literally anyone, especially tennis players. Have you heard of, and I don't know how connected you are, I'm lucky enough to still maintain connections with the alternate coaching community, people who do things differently and have tremendous results. Marv Marinovich and his brother Gary are well-known alternate trainers out of the States for training people like Troy Polamalu, who's a Hall of Fame safety, went to USC, Southern Cal, and one of their greatest players ever. BJ Penn, Hawaiian martial arts champion from the 2000s in the George St. Pierre era, and several other athletes past and present, and definitely future. And where they base their principles of training is truly in the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as an athlete, there's an obsession now for strength and conditioning to be so power focused. How much can you squat? Basically,
Mm-hmm.
what can you move once that's really heavy, and how fast can you move it? There's not as much emphasis on how many times can you do something really fast, especially
Right.
if you're caught. And in a tennis match, if it's 5 hours, it's still going to be maybe 30 minutes, probably less than, of hitting the ball. That's what's so fascinating about, and yet you're pacing around. You still have to stay locked in. You don't get to sit on the bench and fucking tune out. At least compared to team sports. And so the nervous system training, this is really making big waves right now, and I've had some superb experiences with it. Is what you would call fast twitch training, and plyometrics is another
Yeah.
name for it. Rhythm is such a big part of it. I know as a dancer, you'll very much appreciate that aspect. And things like water weights are core elements of that. I'm sitting on an exercise ball right now. That feedback where you can, I mean, there's so many different drills that they do where they take water weights and just, shake them, in every direction that your arm can move. Basically, you can jump like that. You don't have, it's not about just about skipping rope where it's one and you're floating in the air. It's how many times all 10 of your toes are touching the ground, switch to one foot. It's the most dynamic form of training I've seen. And when now that it's one of those things, Emily, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Because when I see, especially fast twitch athletes, I mean, you might say, uh, for someone like an offensive lineman who has to get up out of a stance and try to throw a 350-pound man who's also trying to, explode into him at the same time. You might say power. Okay, absolutely. So there's an element where they build that up. Tennis, where the racket's a pound, where the ball is 2 ounces. And yes, it is, there's a lot of violence that goes into that. The more I see athletes do things slowly and heavily, like Ben Shelton. I know he still trains like a football player. And sure, they do some, resisted band work. This is different. A nervous system training would actually have, you may have seen something like this before, where sprinters train with someone pulling them with a rubber band instead of someone resisting them where they are moving really slowly. Overspeed training is what it's called, where your body then has the experience of I'm faster than I've ever been.
Right.
And there's an element to that with the nervous system training that this is, I'm doing 10, 15, 20 seconds of the fastest I've ever moved with, and then the great thing about a water weight or when you put little pellets, do you know who David Weck is?
No.
David Weck. So, the Bosu ball, which is the half exercise ball.
Yes.
That you can show. So he invented that along with several other things. He has a mind like yours. He said he's gone certified crazy 3 different times. I know you're still waiting on your first. So apples to alligators there. But he's someone who has advanced that thinking as well, where when you work with weights that shift compared to, because a dumbbell is not shifting, a kettlebell is not shifting, even though it has a better chance of moving than a barbell, which is, it's antiquated. I mean, it was the fucking soldiers in World War I that were training with barbells. Like, this is old material now. Bands are not much different. But when you move something like a water weight or something with beads or pellets in it, since that weight moves with you, there
Right.
is a little bit. It's like swinging a racket through space. There's this great club that David Weck invented, where the weight goes through and with your whole body, as opposed to something being very stagnant like a dumbbell, kettlebell, etc. I believe that would make him or anyone feel young again, and because that's been
Yeah, I think he has to change it up, right? And I agree
yeah.
with you about his team, right? I think right now, basically, it's just they're there to make it looks like you have a team, to have company. He's really doing whatever he's doing himself. I don't know that the answer is to go back to Marian Vida or Goran Ivanisevic. Like, I think
I just miss going. Just fairly. I'm going to add in. We're going to talk a little bit about coaching as well.
So there's 2 other things that I could see as part of the path for Djokovic, and then we can move on. I think he did say something that I think is relevant for really relevant for him, is that he doesn't feel like he can play the Masters anymore because of the 2-week scenario. It doesn't really work for him, and I think that is part of the issue. Like, I think if there was still 1-week Masters, I think then he could play 1 or 2 Masters leading up to, and so he could work out some kinks. He could build up his tolerance. He could get a win over them that would make him feel like he can. And so I think that for the longevity of players, I think this 2-week Masters is a bad idea, because older players are not going to want to be away from home for that length of time. Yeah. So I feel like, I don't think they're going to change that sometime in the next couple of years. But like, one thing that really sucks about the Masters is no other tournaments can happen while they're happening. So he couldn't even go play a 500 the second week of a Masters, or he has to do this weird thing where his choice only becomes playing the week before, which then wears him out right. So I think there's scheduling issues that I think if they want people like Novak going forward to stay around for a long time, they need to address. But then the other thing is this, and this sounds kind of dumb on some levels, but I actually think it could work for him. If he plays sort of a little bit less often, like he has been, right? Like, what would happen if he let his ranking drop a little bit lower so that he played Yannick or Alcaraz in the 3rd round, right? And in the third round,
that's chess, Emily. That's chess right there.
It's chess, right? But if he played them in the 3rd round when he still had a full tank and they haven't found their he seems to play the best in the 3rd and the 4th round right now. I'm noticing is pretty much like the 3 through 5 are his best rounds generally, and then he starts to feel a little bit tight, right? And so if he played one of them the first week when he had a full tank, we still know he can beat everyone else, right? So if that might be a theory that he's working. Maybe he does. Maybe not play every master. Like maybe not play every Grand Slam. Maybe take the whole fall. Maybe don't do U.S. Open. Maybe take
Yeah,
the
what it,
whole fall off.
especially with the surfaces, Emily. Like at this point, why not go try to win Wimbledon? Fucking serve and volley every ball for the tournaments that you do play. Lots of time off,
Maybe
and I mean,
there's basically 4 seasons. There's 2 hard
yeah,
court seasons, and there's a clay and a grass season. Pick 2 seasons that you want to play,
and
right?
crush.
And crush it. Take a month off after each one, rest, start building up slowly. But like, for the time that you're choosing to do it, put everything into it. Don't get distracted with all of the other stuff, right? So that's another path for him. But I also think that if he decided that I don't really care, I don't think he cares what he's ranked, but if he was ranked 12 instead of 7, then he would meet them in possibly the round of 16, which seems to be where he plays sometimes his best tennis right now. So that, and maybe he could get a straight set win, 3-7-6s or something like that against, particularly if it was, if he did something like that, and then maybe the other one he hopes that someone else takes him out, or just the confidence he built by beating the other person and then having a dip the next 2 rounds before the final again in terms of like the quality of player he's going to play, right? He could, I don't know. Those are the things that I think about, but I want to see him try something different and not just try something different with like his team or like, like not going to play. I want him to introduce some new novel way of doing this, to see what happens. Because I think it is really cool that he made all the semis this year, but I don't think it will be satisfying for him to just have another year next year of all semis. I think it would be better for him to like completely crash out and burn in one because he tried something that didn't work, and then like you said, like fucking get his microdose on, get his condition situation taken care of, serve and fucking volley, and like surprise. You use the Dimitrov method against Yannick or something like that. Really pay attention to what Dimitrov did with the slice, and then do some serve and volley, because he can do that. But he has to put his whole self into what he's doing. It can't just be the half self.
Agreed. And just to punctuate why I brought up as well the movement stuff, because I wanted to give you the credit for planting that seed with me, that it will require a much different perspective shift. And so it can't just be physical. The reason I brought up that particular training is because it would be a different way of feeling and very much then the state that it puts your body in to then go see a court differently, about how to move differently, how to attack, how to force the issue differently.
I have a couple of parties that I would love to take Novak to. And when I say party, I don't mean like wild debauchery, though that's certainly going on there. Like when I go to the parties that are the music that I'm the most into, I'm eating healthy for days ahead of time. I'm like stretching and getting myself prepared like I used to for a gymnastics meet, because I want to be able to like feel good the whole time, right?
Yeah.
But when I go to a party, like I don't go from start to finish. I usually stay there for like 6-7 hours, right? But sometimes the DJ that I like the most is on at the end, and you want to have a lot of energy, so you have to conserve your energy throughout. Like there's, especially if you've taken a psychedelic, there's like highs and lows to that. There's the conditions that I said. It's usually hot in there. Sometimes there's no air conditioning. There's
it sounds like tennis.
There's the game you're playing with yourself. Like, I'm thirsty. Should I drink water? Because then I'll have to pee. But also, do I want to reduce the minerals in my body? Do I want to wait? Do I want to put some minerals in my water? Because like once you remineralize once, it's like hard to do that again and get the same. Right? There's all these same conversations that you have when you're playing a long tennis match. But it's fun. It's like a fun way to train because you're enjoying the music. It feels good to dance and whatever it is. But it's kind of like like a tennis match. Okay, enough on Novak.
Very much so. No, true enough. And I think there's a final word to be said on Novak. And yes, you and I are available to be hired as freelance consultants. Our fees are our own. It is true that he can beat everyone else. And
yes,
it's not the one that I do not have fitness questions about. I am very intrigued by what you said, because you do wonder about that. The fact that he does meet these guys so much later in a tournament where, of course, fitness is a factor and freshness is a factor. So for him to meet them in when he hasn't been playing several other world-class athletes, the one I have the least amount, the one who has the best fitness profile is Alcaraz. I haven't been worried about him in a minute. And Sinner, if it's bugs or strains or whatever, it's been more of a factor for him. It was early for him, and I've so enjoyed a lot of. I don't find him as boring as a lot of people do. I do find him compelling for different reasons. Not least of all because when he started, even in late 22, and we forget that probably the other best match that they've played, other than the French Open final, was U.S. Open when they're both basically teenagers. Yannick must have been 21 or something. 5 sets, I think it's 5 hours, one of the longest matches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and sublime effort in tennis. I think Alcaraz may have saved a match point or something like that in there. But Sinner used to be such a yapper. And we can dovetail this with a coaching conversation as well. I want to bring this up real quick. This graphic, you may have seen this. This just came across my radar this morning to shift a little bit. One last thing on Novak, truly, and Novak and Fritz, because like you said, he's the 4th best player in the world, give or take, and the number 1 American, and seems to be consistently quarterfinal, semifinal, or occasionally better, and has the skill set to beat most of the people in the draw. He's 0-11 versus Novak Djokovic. I don't think his numbers are any better against the other two that we're talking about here. One of my favorite, probably my favorite rivalry story is Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert.
Mm-hmm.
And Martina Navratilova's game and story is one of the probably my favorite in women's tennis history. And not only for this, it took Navratilova years to stop Everett's domination of her, but once she did, she controlled the rivalry after losing 21 of their first 25 matches. Can you imagine that, Emily? You must think Chrissy has my number all day if you lose 21 out of the first 25 matches that you play against her. And again, things that would crush most people. And they finished the rivalry with Navratilova ahead 43-37. And like that is resilience personified. That is clear adaptation. How do I beat this person?
Yep. Well, she was also really the first female player to introduce fitness as a huge component.
Yes, indeed.
And so I think that was the main component, both to her being able to turn the rivalry around and then dominate it, but also the longevity. Martina played doubles until she was like 50.
One of the best doubles players ever. And where I was just reading, her Wimbledon titles, it's like, playing mixed.
She won Wimbledon. She won Grand Slams in mixed doubles in the 2000s and I think she played with Bob Bryan or Mike Bryan.
That's right.
Right? Like,
that's
so
right.
Her dominance was like over 3 or 4 generations in doubles, right? It's kind of crazy. All right,
longevity is superb, and I miss having her in the booth. We could talk about the very poor commentary as well, which if you're not a tennis fan, I've definitely watched sports with people who like to listen to broadcasters and think that they're learning something no matter what sport it is. Football is probably the biggest example of that. I have a lot of respect for baseball announcers because of all the dead air time that they have to fill with something reasonably intelligent. This, and I'm going to post this at some point on my Home Court Health Instagram so people can dig into this. I'll repost this for anyone watching as well. Over 15 matches that Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner have played. The point differential as it stands right now, and there have been plenty of ebbs and flows.
I love this. I saw this morning for the first time too.
Yeah. The point differential is in favor of Alcaraz, 6 points. And in the 15 matches they've played, Carlos has won 10 of those. There's a story I remember from when Roger Federer beat Robin Soderling on his way to play Rafa in that 08 final. He beat him 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. And people were saying he dominated Soderling in that match. The point differential was 5 points.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is what is so one of the many.
Well, this connects to the rivalry between Djokovic and Fritz that you're talking about, because the big difference, especially in recent years, has not been he's not blowing him off the court. He's just playing the bigger points better.
Absolutely.
Right. And he knows Sampras is most famous for like playing the scoreboard as opposed to playing his opponent.
Yeah.
Novak has gotten very good at that late in his career. And that's what the Sinner Alcaraz, rivalry seems to, even at this early stage, be down to. The thinner Alcaraz thing. So I agree with you. So you have to look at Alcaraz's body. Like Alcaraz is an athlete. Sinner does not look like an athlete to me. Sinner looks like a skinny person who has like learned to become athletic, but he does.
Yeah, I'm thinking of tennis players, even at one extreme, which is Rod Laver, who was, short and still, but I mean the legs are crazy. Like there's still an upper body build. Bjorn Borg for sure. If you go generational, and then you get into people like if it's Lendl or Goran, guys who were bigger after some time, there's still an upper body build. There's absolutely a lower body build, and Sinner does not really have that. It's gotten a little bit better,
Well,
but
even like this is what's crazy. And I watch a lot of tennis. I watch tennis
yeah.
every week. So I'm constantly looking at the evolution of their physiology. Are they losing weight? Are they gaining weight? Are they looking fitter? When Sinner came back from his 3-month suspension, he looked huge at Rome. Like he looked the biggest I've ever seen him.
Imposing for him.
Imposing. Yeah. And literally 2 weeks later at the French, he looked back to the way he was before. He cannot keep weight on. He has to literally be lifting super duper heavy weights almost every day in order to build. And as soon as he stops doing that, because he's playing or because travel or whatever it is, his body reverts. Now, he had 2 years ago, he built his muscles a little bigger and they've stayed like that. Like he really worked hard at it. But he bulked before Rome this year, and literally within weeks it was gone. Right. Yeah. And so he struggles to maintain that. My feelings about a couple things are true. I respect Sinner, right? Like I think he's a good player, and I think he has worked very hard for what he has accomplished. Like you see, he has a weakness, he goes, he works on it, he comes back, it's better, he does it different the next time. I respect that. I find his dominance, when he's dominating, I find his dominance boring, which I also found Roger Federer's dominance boring. Nadal's dominance and Djokovic's dominance always involved more epic battles than the dominance. Like when like the Wimbledon final wasn't very interesting to me. It was just like it became pretty clear halfway through the second set what was going to happen, and there was no. I loved the French Open, so when someone else can pull Jannik into a battle, they're going to win, but that becomes an interesting match. But when he's on, because he's an algorithm, he is not like what he's looking for is to get into this specific rhythm. And then once he's in that rhythm, he can stay there. And so once he's in that rhythm, there's nothing anyone can really do about it. But if he can't have that rhythm, he doesn't have any other answers. He has no other answers if he can't have that rhythm. And when I felt like Federer was a more complete and interesting tennis player. But from 2000 and like 4 or to about 2007, when Nadal started to become a factor in other places besides clay, it was just, we already knew before the tournament started that Federer was going to win, and it was just boring to watch. I prefer, like, this is the most dominant performance Carlos has ever done. Like I really like there to be more epic battles. I know you don't want an epic battle in every round, but the reason I so love the Djokovic-Nadal rivalry is because they were epic battles. They were all like that French Open thing, right? Yeah. Federer and Nadal had that for a little bit, but then at a certain point, it wasn't that anymore. So for me, like for Jannik to win, it can't be an epic battle, and so which makes his dominance boring. His being part of the story is not necessarily boring. I love when he gets into remember that knockdown drag out he got into with Zverev at the US Open a few years ago too? That was also amazing, right? Like I love that, but I don't enjoy his dominance, which isn't the same as not like, he's just not a player that super appeals to me, but I respect him, right? I like Alcaraz's, everything about Alcaraz appeals to me more. That's my bias. Small person, energetic, charismatic, whatever it is.
Would you shave your head before the biggest tournament of the year?
Oh, I wouldn't, but I'm sure glad he did, because he has the worst. Like when he has like that helmet head going on, it's like the worst ever. So I always prefer him. I always want to see him with very little hair and with a sleeveless shirt on, because he looks so imposing in that. Like he looks better than anyone else in that. But the way he moves is so athletic. Like every jump, every reach, everything is like, if he weren't, he could be a gymnast, he could be a soccer player, he could be like, he's athletic in every way, and he's got a lot of personality, right? And Sinner is just a little bit more contained, which I can respect, but I don't know that like Sinner being the dominant player helps tennis in terms of like growing the sport, which doesn't take anything away from his amazing accomplishments.
Mhm.
That I think the rivalry is excellent. And I hope someone else comes along that will make it a little bit interesting, because I don't want it to be the two of them in every single final forever. Like, I'm hoping a third person comes along. It looks to me like the most likely person to disrupt that anytime in the next 2 years is Ben Shelton, right? It doesn't look like, I see Joao Fonseca maybe later, but he doesn't look very athletic to me either. He has a long way to go. He looks like he's pretty doughy, right? But Ben Shelton is not as good of a tennis player as either of them. But Ben Shelton has a belief in himself that you cannot teach. And Ben Shelton has a lot of bravado and a lot of like when he knows how to take it to you, and he does it. It doesn't feel like he thinks he's secondary to them. I don't think he has an overestimate of his capabilities. Right? Like, I feel like he knows what he's improved so much. Like, it was really sad what happened to him. He's playing so well this summer. But I do think that, I don't know that he can beat both of them to a title. But I think he can certainly beat either one of them once, and then if the other, if he ends up playing someone else, a Fritz in a final or whatever it is, then he can do it. But I don't know who. It's hard for me to imagine, like, even some of these other people who are very good. Like, I was actually really impressed with FAA. Like, I felt like that was one of the best runs for Sinner's money that anyone's given him recently.
Yeah.
Other than Dimitrov. Like, that Dimitrov match was so sad at Wimbledon. But so we'll see. Like, it would be interesting if someone else could pepper in there once in a while. But that number, the fact that there's only 6 points between them over the course of their rivalry so far, like, it tells you like where it's at. That's what we want.
And it's resulted in Alcaraz winning twice as many. Well, and I don't think Cincinnati was in there either way. Even if it's 9-5, it's still, what someone would very much consider the upper hand. And the quotes coming out of the pressers about, Carlos thought he played perfect. The reason he was my pick going into that match, I thought the tournament, you can, who knows how someone's going to show up to a tournament. Before that match, I get the feeling from Carlos is that, and give credit to his team as well, that he is the quick study. He is even though Sinner can be cyborg algorithm, what have you, that Alcaraz, I may have even intimated this from you, Emily, but thinking that the science is an expression of the art.
Yep.
And you have an artist who can really execute. And when you get to see Carlos dialed in, letting it fly like he did pretty much in every match, off every ground stroke on every move, like there's no holding back, and it's still not reckless. There's not that much space of execution for him.
He's learned to control the recklessness, right? It seems like he's matured, and he understands that, like, he's not here to be Gael Monfils, right? Who's entertaining, but like silly sometimes.
That's right.
But like, he knows when he can do that and when he can't. But no, here's the thing, right? Like, he's able to execute because of his athletic superiority to everyone else. That's it. Like, no, Djokovic had to work hard to become that good. I'm not saying they don't all work hard. Sinner can dominate under certain conditions, and I do think that Sinner has maximized his potential, right? I don't know what the sky's the limit for Alcaraz. I don't know that Sinner can get that much better other than adding net play to his. I think he has a fitness problem. Like, the way he walks around, for a young guy, he walks around like he's hurting a lot. And I don't know that his body is built to be like, I don't know that he's going to be able to do to his fitness what Djokovic did to his fitness. Like, Djokovic used to retire in matches. He used to get tired. He used to have all that kind of stuff. And then he went and became a beast. I don't know that that's something Jannik's body does. I think for Jannik, the thing is, like, get into your algorithm and you'll win the match. But if you can't get into your algorithm, you're going to have all kinds of problems. Whereas with Carlos, it's kind of like, if he can manage his sort of manage himself, right? He has the ability to produce whatever needs to be produced in order to accomplish the task, right? It's I used to be very opposed to how much, and I still am on some levels, how much coaching he's. It's not as bad as it was for a while. I used to get so much coaching from Wonky, as they call him, Wonky, that it was like I think a person should be able to do it by themselves out there. But with all that coaching, if the person can't execute what the coach is saying, it's irrelevant. And Alcaraz is obviously able to execute everything he's being told to do, and that's its own kind of magic, right? I think the ideal is the blend of both of those things. But yeah, no, he is the quickest study. I remember watching him the first time he beat Djokovic at Wimbledon, and I was watching him learn in the match. And right, I remember seeing him in the first set, seeing him in the second set, seeing him in the third set, and it was like he was improving as a player during the match.
Yeah, and as you said, Sinner, it's engage weapon number one. Okay, we're out of bullets, and now what? Whereas Sinner, it can be, and I mean, I think he has that artist, that creative capacity as well to do the problem solving. And they said, I mean, even if it's over time, playing the long game, they said after his U.S. Open win that after he lost Wimbledon, took a week off, and partied, and did whatever he needed to do to cut loose, and then it was preparing to beat this one guy. And I mean, he's put himself in that position where it's not like, how do I win the tournament and manage the draw and play these different, but no, it's like you trust you're gonna make it happen when you employ, and that is where the team comes in for sure. I don't enjoy watching it. I don't enjoy watching the constant back and forth. I mean, I much more enjoy a stoic presence on the court. This is why I really admire and appreciate your attentiveness to how people move.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I watch people because Arthur Ashe said 70% of tennis is won by your ability to get to the ball, by your footwork, by your anticipation. Actually, what I learned from this is it's not always about anticipation. It is like instant problem solving. Because there's a great long quote from Rafa, just literally no ball is the same. I don't care if it looks like a forehand, it's 6 feet over the net. The way it's hitting the court, because the way that I hit it back, wind, sun, whatever. So it's that constant. I've always found that so enjoyable about Carlos, is that adaptability that is electric and entertaining, and it is a fairly unique style. And still, these are the paradoxes of the sport, which is that there are points that are worth more than others,
Yes.
based on that value, scale, significance. And when you lose one, you still have to say it's worthless. It's if I'm going to win 1 out of 2, like Roger broke down, then it's holding, like you said, multiple things can be true.
He also has this quality that Simone Biles also has, which to me means that he's not only one of the best tennis players ever, but just in that conversation about like most talented athlete of all times or whatever, is that he seems to be like, the reason people like to watch her is because she gets outside of our regular understanding of space and time in the way that she moves. And the way he injects pace out of nowhere, that force that he creates when he hits one of those forehands that looks like you don't know till the last second if he's going to hit a drop shot or a forehand, and then he hits a forehand at 109 miles an hour, and it's just like, whoa, right? Like you can see him like passing the speed of light for just a second. And all of us, like, I think that whether people recognize this or not, the whole purpose of life is to experience moments that are outside of our norm, outside of like the normal flow. When something exceeds that, like speeds it up or slows it down to a place that is like, whoa, reality feels completely different. And when he's playing, those moments that everyone responds to, aside from the trick shots that are all fun, are those moments where he goes from 0 to a million in 1 second flat, right? And it's like almost like breaking the sound barrier, or the light, or speed of light, or whatever it is. I think that there's like very few people who are capable of doing that on a regular basis, and he does it, every time he performs. Not every point, but in every match, even matches where he's playing terribly, there's always that moment where he exceeds the barrier.
And what we miss out on in the women's game is that level of I think where it's just such a because I mean, yeah, we have big ball hitters, the stats that came out about Anisimovan's backhand being, faster on average than Yannick and Carlos. And yeah, I mean there's some big hitters, Matty Keys, Anisimova, and Sabalenka, whomever. Um, and we don't we aren't treated as often to those moments of stunning athleticism, especially because just as a symptom of the fact that we don't have Martina and Steffi and Billie Jean King, people, where you really get to see their athleticism on display, especially North and South,
Mm-hmm.
but also East and West. I mean, so still, I do find that there are women's matches I enjoy watching. It's much more matchup heavy because it's so feast or famine on things like serve and return, especially serve. I mean, in both on both sides of the draw, Emily, I don't remember a time when it was so common to just be like, oh, 10 double faults in a match.
Right.
Can still come out on top.
Yep.
I mean, Sinner went through that stretch, especially in the beginning of the year, of going, you know, uh, dozens of service games without a double. And now and I think that was fairly tidy as the tournament got on. But say a word for Coco here. I mean, I am supportive of any champion, any world class athlete that said, I'm just gonna do this thing that is a level up, come
Mm-hmm.
what may. And you have to, I mean, the intrinsic compromise in there is that maybe I don't maybe I subjugate my will to win to prioritize learning this skill in a pressure cooker. And she, I don't know if she wasn't ready for that or, but just watching the distress that it caused her, which was really quite something to see because it did seem so. I mean, I'm sure there's other
It was
factors.
still better. Like she went out first round at Wimbledon, so like this here she went out what round of 16, quarterfinals, something like round of 16, I think round of
Oh,
16.
third round, third
Third.
round.
Okay, for some reason I thought okay. So it was better. I was one of the people who for a long time I felt like Coco should have taken a year off a year or two
Yeah.
ago.
Because it's not just the serve. I mean, and for
And really even a bigger problem than the serve.
yeah, and to say a word, I mean, she is the great line that girl will run across broken glass barefooted to go get a tennis ball. It's like Iga, to see that level of footwork and intensity with the lower body consistently is absolutely inspiring, and it puts them in so many great positions to have what the people I learned tennis coined it as, when especially even talking about the Williams sisters or Serena in certain aspects of her game, superior athletes with an inferior program. They don't have the superior technical program that someone like Carlos does. So this is why I think he is so special, is the marriage of a superior technical base with superior athleticism. We see a lot of just great athletes that can go run and blast the ball. But I agree. I mean, the investment would have been, I have millions to go take a time off. And then the upside is you come back and bash people. No one's seen you play.
Right.
If you've taken out, there'll still be a learning curve, but that's an investment, especially over COVID years. It was such a missed
What do you
opportunity.
think? So I was advocating for her to take a year off before she won the U.S. Open, and then she won the U.S. Open, so it becomes this like, well, maybe I don't have to. And then obviously she won the French Open this year. At this point,
No, Sabalenka lost the
so,
French
so
Open
but
this year.
but it's hard to go. I should quit. I should stop when I'm winning. Right? It's easier when you're not. But what do you think? Do you think she should take a significant portion of time off from competing in order to like completely internalize these adjustments, or do you think she should just work on it as she goes for a small percentage of small percentage of improvement every tournament?
I think the time off is a must because what
I
that
That's what
it gives your brain, because the brain, it's said, especially with technical changes, is a protective mother. Is it because then when you step on the court, most athletes, especially if you've gotten yourself that far, I would imagine, are thinking about what to do to win. You don't even have to say the tournament. You can say that point. And especially if it's your point starter that is your biggest focus, and you're
right.
stepping in line, and I think that is a healthy goal, instead of win the tournament or set up a winner. It's like, I mean, really at the most fundamental level, it is hit the best shot with this ball that's coming at me.
Do you,
It's
so
not win the point.
so in your head, is it take the fall off and come back in Australia, or take all the time off until it's time to come back and defend your French Open
I
title?
mean,
What
Yeah, all the time off would be worthwhile because
Yeah.
I think it goes beyond, the serve, and even though that is and it's not even so bad, just whatever, the hot mic or, Andrea Petkovic actually said that she caught her biomechanist coach. Do you know much about him? I mean, I know a little bit about him.
I know
So
about
he
him from Sabalenka, obviously. I also know he works with baseball players and
So so
whatnot.
so he interestingly enough, he comes from that nervous system training world. He trained under
Ah,
the Marevich brothers, and he helped actually George St. Pierre himself rehab from an ACL, is a major advocate for training the feet, training the lower leg, certainly much more of a plyometric, high fast twitch fiber focus. And so that is his biomechanics background, is getting the body to move faster. It was an interesting we've had a lot of good laughs about this, that the cueing that they were giving her during that match where she really struggled was get under and come over the top of the ball. I can
mhm.
tell you, Emily, it is physically impossible to do anything like that with a tennis racket and ball. The the ball, no matter who you are, especially when you're hitting the fastest shot in tennis, which is ostensibly the serve, even if you're her, with even though they were coming in first serves at 80 something and she can hit a forehand at least that hard, the ball is on the string for 3 to 5 milliseconds. You want to know how fast that is? When I do this, do you see
Right,
my tongue move?
right,
That,
yeah,
that lizard move, that's 100 milliseconds.
right,
And we're talking about 5 milliseconds.
yeah, so fast.
So there are things that what we say about coaches, and just to say a word about the coaching, is they are great confidants, mentors, supporters. Some of them I can imagine are really good tacticians, hard to do live. I would leave that to a player instead of saying, well, here's what I see. I mean, again, it's different perspectives. The I'm sure Coco could find someone for the technical help. That someone is not in her camp right now. And so that would require a search. And then you have trust, and those things take time.
Well,
Is the
do you think this is a good hire, the Gavin McMillan, for her, or no?
not really, because I don't think he fixed that much with Sabalenka. She still has a very high toss. She has a hitch.
Right.
It's very much this up down, and she's a very strong woman. She's muscling that ball in with a serve that is good enough. But there's
Robert Phoenix was like texting me all week about how she's a man. I'm like, she's not. I don't think she is, but okay.
I don't think she.
I
You
don't.
know what what I've said about Igor Swiatek.
I didn't know you called her.
Oh yeah. I think I
That's
said that after, but
okay. So you think the Gavin McMillan thing is not? I don't know enough about the technicals.
it's not the silver bullet by any means, and I'm not saying that he's not capable of that. I understand that there
So
are.
you were advising Coco, and you didn't have to consider whether this coach is already taken or not taken or whatever it is. Who would be the coach, and what would be the time frame?
It's 6 months to bring in the forehand as well, and then you may as well just go with the fundamentals for the net game, the interrelationship of strokes. Because I mean, her ready position is with that pancake forehand grip. When that's your base, is returning serve, or even if you have that program with something like going into net, it's another calculation that you have to make that doesn't set you up for success. And there's a school of, I mean, I'm very partial to the school that I came up in, because they are a synthetical system of 7 world class Hall of Fame tennis coaches, both on the mental front and most especially on the technical front. People like Harry Hopman, who from Australia, Davis Cup acclaim from the era of Rod Laver and Roy Emerson and Ken Rosewall and people like that. Two more modern coaches, and she could just have her pick of anyone who's alive.
Who's the coach now that you think though would be the right coach for her?
His name is Steve Smith, and I mean, just for technical exclusive, is he would be the one, because he's worked under the Masters. He's in the South. Has a presence in Florida. Great base tennis is what it's called. Great base tennis.
I
Now,
am.
he's an older guy, New Yorker, or upstate New Yorker, hockey background,
Huh. Okay.
and he would be the guy. I mean, great base tennis is where I push everyone, because they had the time. So I'm wearing my Indian Wells shirt today for us, Emily.
All right.
Indian Wells on the back. And one of the gentlemen that they worked with extensively was Vic Braden. And he was one of the most well-known American developmental coaches, because he started in close concert with Jack Kramer running the Pro Tour in the 60s before it was what it is today, but was instrumental in building that bridge to ATP and the professional system that we have since the early 70s. So steeped in the history, the early growth of the game, the tennis boom, started as a psychologist, and he certainly a jack of all trades, had a remarkable capacity for understanding people, how to help them learn, how to help them balance the ego that is a protective mother that doesn't want to see you lose and struggle and double fault, all in the spirit of doing these things. And he took the time over, I think it was 15 years at Indian Wells, where you have all the best players in the world, doing the high speed film work that even photographers at that time, in the, especially even going into the early 2000s, did not have the framework to catch, ball on a strings, that flat compression.
Yeah. How about that Jasmine Paolini
Oh, it's so
photograph,
brilliant.
right?
It was so fantastic. You gotta marvel at that. You gotta love
Yeah.
that. And there's a lot of weird things that happen with the racket, and there are some things that the deduction that Vic Braden came up with was that the pros are 95 to 98% the same, basically, in their hitting zones. Everything else they do, Maddie Keys takes, you can see my hand back there now. That's her backswing on her fucking forehand. So, and she has to give herself enough time to lay into that thing. Andre Agassi had one of the most compact swings ever.
Yeah.
Alcaraz, is there at times where it's basically a turn and then the fucking whip goes. And Vic Braden is one of the core pillars. So he did the high speed work, and he worked with biomechanics from decades ago to break down what it actually takes to put a ball over the net. You can't, there's no hitting down on a tennis court. We all look at the net through, I mean, even those of us, Emily, who are vertically challenged, are looking, when you stand on the baseline, you look at the net, you look at the other side of the court through the net. It tells your brain that I can swing across my body, that I can swing down. There's so much technical bad information out there that is purported by people like Patrick McEnroe, Chris Evert. Which is fine. That's not their hat.
ESPN has the worst announcer.
Oh, I mean, I wish I could tune into BBC, because I'm sure Tim Henman is a much more
my favorite like tennis announcers who are on the big matches, right? The only one that I think is like I really really enjoy listening to is Jim Courier. I think he's amazing.
Yes,
very good.
Yeah,
right? But I hate listening to the McEnroe brothers, right? It's brutal. I don't really like. I like listening to like Martina and Lindsay Davenport. I think they do a better job than Chris Evert and I used to, even though she's more of like a host, than I like listening to Mary Carollo. Right, I like her better than Chris Evert.
She played a little fast and loose this year. We had some good laughs at her expense of some of the things that came out of her mouth. I think she's.
I only heard her on one match, but back in the day when she was doing it more often, I used to enjoy listening to her talk. Right,
much more energy.
Chris Evert is not my favorite.
No, by no means. And it's fine that, I mean, I from what I understand, because of people like the Great Base, a lot of those people just don't have. I mean, I see it now, Emily, with what I do, since I took years to study the science of teaching tennis, and now I'm in the art, and now I get to be with people and enjoy all those interactions and sharing biofields with people, and especially when seriously, I someone asked me that. They said, how do you think your biofield impacts your tennis clients? I said, well, I should probably, think about that more, because I haven't already. But because thankfully most people are there, excited, happy to play. You work with kids, they're nervous, adults are nervous. It's all of that. But all that to say, I don't quite know where I was going with all that, but for Christy Everett to then go, just what she's like on the court when she's at her academy, if she's telling people, I'm sure there's plenty of good there, but most people are not taught how to teach the things that they purport to teach. I mean, they don't have all of the information. And what I tell people is that it doesn't make sense for me as your guide to give you bad directions. So I have researched all the best directions that I can give you, even for the skill set of bringing color and context to a match. I find whether it's the McEnroes or Chrissy or a lot of those broadcasters, it's either, I was just talking about this with someone who I really respect the other day. It's like, this point is the tell all for the match. It's like that narrow of a perspective, or they're in, talking still about, well, you remember in 2022 when Novak was ejected from Australia, or
right.
So it's seriously, it's like the context goes way out of the match.
Yeah.
And or it's about the tournament, it's anywhere but edifying and interesting about the match itself. And I don't think Andy Roddick is the answer, because he his podcast style is not my favorite.
Mine either, right? Like
No.
he was one of my favorites as a tennis
Yeah.
player. I loved Andy
And
Roddick's,
clearly an interesting, thoughtful guy, but
he's
goodness.
not. He's not. I do listen to his podcast, but I don't like his podcast as much as Gil Gross or Nothing Major. I like Nothing Major is more entertaining. I think Gil Gross does like the best analysis of the people who are doing sort of podcasts, right? But I also just think that like Andy Roddick thinks he thinks he's right about a lot of things in the world that he actually doesn't know anything about, right? Like, and
you said it, not me. You said it,
right? And he does not know what he is talking about, and he finds himself. And I don't think, like, I think if you were to, away from anyone else listening and watching, pointing out to him that everything he says literally ends up always being in support of the establishment, right? Like, I think he would not like that. I don't think that that's his purpose of doing that, but his natural tendency, his natural bias is to find a way to like insult the person who's actually trying to make a point that goes against the establishment, and finds himself defending something that is actually retarded because he's like anti-establishment, right? Like it's and I just, yeah, I feel like it's a I think he's more. I don't think of him as being like a person who's out of touch with reality, because I do think he's thoughtful, but I think that like he makes all of his judgments on things from the position in which he sits, which is not normal. It's not a regular position, and so he acts like he's an everyman. He acts like he's just like some dumb tennis player with the podcast, but he actually has a lot of influence, and he's had lots of opportunity. And I hate when people say privilege or whatever, but right, like how nasty he was to like Vasek Pospisil when they were on the podcast about the PTPA stuff and whatever. Like that was very telling. And he just is always like, he's get your vaccine. So we support Ukraine. Put the black flat square in your social media post. And I don't think that I don't think that if you pointed this out to him, he'd be like, I don't do that, do I? But he does do that.
He does, and you and I are privy to some other good examples of that. I think that's a theme that we're seeing in capital M media.
Mm-hmm.
Is and I was trying to explain this to someone the other day. I don't think I was doing a good enough job because they didn't have the benefit of some of the things that I consume. Just to say that you and I know a lot, probably a lot of examples of that, of people who are perceived as being alternative, we'll say.
Right.
We're going to reserve the preferred word of alternate media for us, for those of us, as Danny would encourage us to say, who actually practice that, but otherwise are, as you said, do find a way to be supportive of establishment, and especially because they occupy that echelon. And he's on Amazon Prime, for God's sakes. Like it's not, he's not a counterculture.
Not at all. Podcast. Everything he does is in support of system.
And I much prefer, for my knowledge base around tennis. This is why I listen to the Great Base Tennis Podcast. They've done 263 Wednesdays in a row of pardon me.
I've never heard of it. I'll have to check it out.
It's super. I mean, so their base is it is about player development. I mean, really any player, but they work with high level world class juniors. And so, I mean, it really is grassroots building of the game, and from as many avenues as they can approach. One of my visions is to support them on the health and fitness front, because the tennis world is sorely lacking in much more progressive and effective guidance on that. Somehow, bananas became the choice fruit of.
You know who else I really enjoy listening to, who doesn't get all the credit she deserves? Chanda Rubin. I love listening to Chanda.
Yes, indeed. Like. Her, if she's with Jim Courier, I mean that's
my favorite. That's like
the Tennis Channel is actually doing good work.
And Tennis Channel has some good younger people on. Like I love that chick from she's from England, and she comes over sometimes and does it. And her name is,
I don't know names because I only have Tennis TV, which is just ATP.
I can't remember her name. She's like she's younger. She's probably like Gil's age or something like that. She's a British girl. I don't think she even was a player. I think she just liked tennis and sort of got into it. Like I enjoy listening to her. Right. I don't understand how Coco Vandeweghe has become like a key player in all of this, because she just doesn't do it for me.
No.
But Shanna Rubin and Jim Curry are like, that's my
Good
favorite.
picks. No, I mean, and they're hard to find. And I mean, just to say a final word on Great Base as well is, I mean, their podcast and their presence around moving tennis forward is rooted in tennis history. I mean, certainly what I consider to be, with a well-rounded perspective, the cream of the crop guidance for. So one of their pillars as well is Dr. Jim Lair, who is among one of Novak's favorite. They worked together for a time. He's worked with many individual athletes, especially on the mental front. And I mean, the first time I listened to him on a podcast was with Great Base, and they were talking really about tennis families and
Mhm.
parent-child dynamics, still holding people accountable. And I just found him to be an authentic, brilliant, thoughtful man. And so he's one of their pillars as well. So they talk about these kinds of things for tennis, and there's so much focus, and it gives them, I think, the cachet to then go talk about the pro game, because they've worked with professionals. They have, as I said, are great students of tennis history. When I hear people like Andy Roddick and Patrick McEnroe who are hyper focused, even though Patrick McEnroe did his stint with the USTA, I mean, that organization is in such trouble. I won't get into
Well,
that.
let's use Patrick McEnroe to bridge to the Taylor Townsend incident.
Yes, indeed. Did he have any particular thoughts on that? I mean,
No,
I caught the, as you can imagine.
you know about their history, don't you?
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Oh,
Oh yes.
they have a history?
Yes, they have a history. So Taylor Townsend was a top junior tennis player in the world. She won like whatever's considered like the junior world championships of tennis or whatever that is. I don't know what it's called in tennis. And Patrick McEnroe was head of the USTA development program or whatever at that point. And he cut off funding to her, citing fitness concerns. Obviously, Taylor Townsend is built a little bit different than the other players. She always has been. This is not something, this didn't happen once all the time.
No.
So he cut off.
And it's not even a post-maternal thing either.
Would be, no, she's actually in better shape post-maternal, right?
Agreed.
But this is a person who achieved #1 in the world with that body in juniors. And because, whatever his idea, if we were talking about someone who is number 20 in the country and you felt was talented and was not maxing their talent because they weren't paying attention to their fitness, there's a discussion there. But when someone literally just was declared the #1 junior in the world, and you do that, like, that's a ballsy fucking move. And so, she had to kind of carve her own path because she stopped getting any of the assistance that young, talented people get from the USTA. And it's taken her a while. She's been around for a long time, and she always has flashes of brilliance. But she's the #1 doubles player in the world. She's won 2 Grand Slams in doubles. And, a couple of times this year, she's made pretty good runs in singles, and this was really impressive, right? What not just the way that she won as many matches as she did, but sort of how she won them. She really just took her all court at the net style of play, to like, she was way more interested in the net than most of the top singles players are, but she's not bad from everywhere else in the court either. And for someone her size, she moves incredibly well.
Absolutely.
Incredibly well. But she's the one who got into this dispute with Elena Ostapenko at the net. Since we're back to our list of this kind of stuff.
Our regularly scheduled programming.
Yes. And I thought I actually loved this moment, not for how ugly it was at the net, because it was ugly, but like I actually was able to explain to people in my life who normally see everything through the lens of racism that this was actually not a racist. This was not an issue about racism. And it didn't feel, for the first time, it didn't feel like people were saying, well, there was racial, I don't know. They wanted, it was a very half-hearted attempt to even try and make it. It was very clearly not about race once you understood the context of what was going on. And I felt like, in the end of the day, it did turn out to be what it should have been. And that is just that Elena Ostapenko is a poor sport. And she is a poor sport, whether the person on the other side of the net from her is black, white, green, purple, old, young, fat, thin, whatever it is. It was quite literally the way that uneducated translates in in Latvian or whatever is as, etiquette or manners. And so she was basically saying that you have poor tennis etiquette because she did things in a different way than,
Yeah,
right. But I guarantee you, she would not have cared about that if she had won the match. She's just a poor sport. And
absolutely.
right, period. And it felt like everyone who I had this conversation with were like, oh, okay, I understand, instead of trying to convince me that really I'm insensitive to racist issues or whatever it is. So I do think the world is starting slightly to turn away from everything having to be about race, because this could have turned into like a total Black Lives Matter, Me
Oh,
Too,
yeah.
and it didn't. It was like everybody was like, oh, that's terrible. Taylor Townsend handled it off, but like handled it awesome. And then we had a more nuanced conversation about what really went on there. And I think at the end of the day, nobody thinks it's about racism, including Taylor. I think it was great that she said, yeah, I don't think it's that.
Including me, because I don't know any Latvians.
Right.
I am generally aware that I often marvel at the ability of any of those professional tennis players to speak English as well as they do.
Right.
Um,
Isn't it funny how the Americans aren't expected to speak other
they're
languages?
idiots.
Everyone else has to speak English.
Seriously, and they do it amazing. Even if you're Jakub Menšík, who's a couple years on the tour from fucking Czechoslovakia, like I don't think that's an easy jump. I remember listening to Yuri Lehechka talk, and I'm thinking that's a pretty eloquent 26-year-old, whatever he is.
To listening, because Carlos is not the greatest.
No,
Carlos,
he's not. Neither was Rafa. Neither was Rafa
right.
still.
But with Carlos, there's this, you're listening to him try to make it up as he goes, and you're always like, he's almost going to say something.
Yeah.
He never does say something dumb, but you're always very concerned that the next word he says is going to be like completely dumb.
And he's 22 now. I feel like we've missed it. Now he'll be more polished. I feel like we've missed the window. He's like, my goal is to win the match, and
that was pretty good.
With the voice right now. Now we're doing Carlos impressions. We got to land the plane sooner than later. No, I mean, so all that to say, I know what it's like to have, or I have a nuanced anticipation of a European woman who's a bad sport and is pretty immature, telling someone that they have no class over a let court and all that kind of stuff. And then you have Naomi Osaka, who says,
"Oh, another great story from that."
So I mean, sure. Yeah. I'm not her.
Story, I mean, the one that crossed over into the mainstream. Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really her biggest supporter on the. I mean, she's another basher. I think that there's holes in the game. And then whenever she opens her mouth, she is the poster child for whatever generation she's from.
Right.
With the whiny monotone. And whoever was in her earpiece saying that that's the worst thing you can say to a Black person in America. Emily, I can think of at least one worse thing that you could say to a Black person in America. So, as we know, as you and I believe, the celebrities in this country do not actually set the tone for what is happening, for what is real in reality. I know they try. And that was one of the only things that I was like, I didn't see that like you. I didn't see that really pervade the cultural discussion. It's ESPN. Like, I know they'll dance around it and whisper to try to create something about it, but it didn't really take off, which I think is something of a relief. And it's an international sport. I mean, thank God that we do have that balance to it.
Yeah, it's not an American sport.
Yeah, I mean, which is great, because then these things are not, constantly front of mind. You and I talked a little bit before about, we can guess at some of the promotion behind, I never found. I know Francis Tiafoe has a big personality. I don't consider him to be role model material as a player, as an athlete. You remember start of the season, the hot mic F-bombs that he threw at an umpire, for that, that was wild. I have almost never seen.
What do you think about him after this U.S. Open? Stock up or stock down? You think he's done, or you think he's gonna? You think he's done? Look, we forgot there. We didn't. There's the whole Medvedev thing too. Where are you at? Where are you at with your stock on Medvedev, Tsitsipas, and Zverev?
Oh my, the next big three. You mean the next big three
generation or whatever?
No kidding. I knew Steph was literally a problem child. Mm-hmm. The whole family relationship.
It's so whiny.
And like, the ego is there. He fancies himself big deep thinker, very creative, poetic. Like that's all there, without having a lot figured out. And sometime when I watched him play cocky tennis, it was very entertaining. And in two major finals against Novak both times, I mean, the caliber was there.
He was so good for a period of time. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I thought, I mean, I won't do a big deep dive on the technical stuff, but I mean, there's another guy when he went on a crazy streak a couple years ago with a very high first serve percentage that people were making a big deal about. He still is running into the left to the stands on the left when he
Yes,
serves.
totally.
I've
Such,
never,
such an
oh my god,
awkward fall to the side.
oh yeah.
Do you think
Uh,
he's done, or do you think he's gonna rise again?
the resurgence in that case is still familial, relational, coaching camp related because
But do you
it's
think
not
he will or
like
he won't?
I don't think he'll make that leap. I think he just like for things to crash and burn in just I was gonna say nuclear fashion, but that's not really legit. Just firebomb fashion with Goran, who I find to be. I mean, we know he's a character, and those are probably two dynamic personalities clashing. Way too public, way too uh, explosive just in how that went. Excited for Medvedev to be going out on his own against someone
Medvedev
that
hired Thomas Johansson.
who Tsitsipas did.
No, Medvedev just hired Thomas Johansson and someone else. Hold on a
Uh,
second.
Swede from like I think former player from
Yeah, but he hired two.
90s 2000s.
He hired two. He hired Thomas Johansson and someone else. Who is it? Rohan Getsky.
We'll have to do a look.
Johansson and Rohan Getsky.
I have always found him to be supremely interesting. Another guy, I would say Manarino-esque in terms of what
Yeah,
you do with
yeah.
a tennis ball.
I think he'll have another run. I don't know that he'll
Uh,
run he'll win the world or a Grand Slam, but I think he'll be in the top 5 again.
There's no reason he shouldn't because
Yeah.
I think the game is still there. For Bonzi to have his number, I mean, he had beaten him, a couple times lately, which is just wild. And one of my favorite clips of him is from the clay court season a couple years ago, and I quote this all the time.
The Illuminati clip?
No, I know, which is great. Well, there's a montage. If you're not on Instagram, are you? You spend any time on Instagram?
I look at things on Instagram.
Oh,
I
you have a
don't
burner? Okay. Emily's got a burner. So if I can find you, I'll send you anything that tickles our fancy. But one of the great Medvedev montages starts with him back in must have been 2020 or 21, and it's him and his little bit of broken English going, "Hey Stefano, shut your fuck up, okay?" And it's like at the end of the match, like, and it's just so they hated each other from the jump. But the one from maybe a year or two ago with the clay is he's having a back and forth with the umpire, and he says, "Carlos, the ball is freaking out. I want to know who will take action, who will take responsibility." And he's been saying that over and over, and who will take responsibility? It's one of my favorite questions
Yeah.
of all time. Now, I don't know if we have nearly the time, Emily, and I mean, I have all the time. We'll land it here in a little bit. You have threatened to discuss the enigmatic nature of Alexander Zverev.
All right. I'll do it.
Before.
All right.
Take it away.
All right. So just want to be very, very clear that this is not an accusation or a judgment. Okay. This is just a intuition that I don't understand why it keeps happening. And at this point, it's happened enough times that I have to pay attention to
Trust it, for sure.
All right. And when I say this, understand that I'm saying it like in the sort of energetic or subtle energy realm. Okay. I'm not saying that like literally in 3D physical world as we understand it, although I think it's possible too. I think Alexander Zverev is a vampire. And when I'm saying that, I don't mean, oh, he's an energy vampire. I don't mean right? I think I think he has type 1 diabetes, which I think we should have a lot of questions about what that condition actually is.
Yep.
But I think that genetically, generationally, he comes from a line that is like a vampire line, right? And that so again, remember, we're speaking in twilight. Like, I'm not saying this is literally happening, but this like, there's a guy goes to parties in Los Angeles that looks like Alexander Zverev. And so whenever I'm like deep in my dancing or whatever, this fucking dude will stand right in front of me. So then I spend like half of my trip, half of my party thinking about Alexander Zverev, and this is always a place my mind goes. And it's not like I thought this before, so I'm just like feeding it when I'm in that condition. It's like I'm thinking about something totally else, and then this always comes up, right? So I think that like in, you know, some sort of alternate reality, or in the way that things actually were before we got like dumbed down into believing that things are actually the way they tell us they are now, that he would have been, being the youngest son, like there would have been this like becoming a man of like going out and getting the kill for the family, right? Like bringing like kind of like wolves or whatever it is type of thing, right? Like, and that he has this built up aggression inside of himself that has surfaced in some of these questionable assaults on umpires and possible assaults on women, which there actually is like no evidence for, right? Like, I mean, there's the evidence of testimony or circumstantial kind of things, but none of these women have ever like followed through on the pressing of charges, or it's always going to the media or pressing the charge and then backing out and going for a financial settlement instead. I'm not condoning any abuse of anyone, right? I've seen him abuse the umpire with the racket. This is not condoning it. But he also is very passive as a tennis player, which is, so here's someone that seems to have struggle controlling rage and energy under certain circumstances, and feeling challenged to harness rage and energy in the more appropriate scenario. I feel like he's constantly in this battle between trying to bring enough of the monster out to be effective, but not so much of the monster out that he can't control it. And this is the situation that he sort of has found himself in, where because if you look at him for the last 2 years, he's much calmer than he used to be. He does not have outbursts.
Very markedly
more
so.
of these things. And he's also declined as a tennis player, in my opinion, even though he's consistent enough to be in the top 3, 4, 5 in the world all the time. Like, he's not playing like he was playing when he hurt his ankle playing against Rafa at French Open, right? Like, he has the ability to be an aggressive player, but when he gets into those positions where your monster needs to come out, it's almost like he's afraid to let the monster out. And in my head, and again, we're just speaking in sort of Twilight Zone here. Like, I think he's afraid that if he lets the monster out, he's going to jump over the net and devour his opponent. Because I think that that's actually what his genetic line was possibly bred for. And like, it is unusual. He's obviously Russian, but he lives in Germany and he plays in Germany. He plays for Germany. Like, I wonder if there's some ancestral scuffles and battles or whatever that they got themselves into in Russia that sort of required them to leave. He looks like a vampire to me. Have you taken a good look at him?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and live too. I mean, obviously,
yeah. Like, I say this, and I also say this. I like Alexander Zverev. Like, I root for him. Like, he's not my favorite player, but I do hope he gets one. I do hope he figures out how to wrangle his inner beast so that he can unleash it appropriately and use it to his advantage. I think a lot of us have interesting ancient genetic things going on inside of us that actually help to explain some of the things we're good at and some of the things we struggle with, and that our lives are really about learning how to manage and harness all of that and use it in a way that is, so this is not some unique critique or criticism of him or anything like that, but I've had this has been pressing on my mind for a number of years now before I even ever talked about it. And the whole thing with the diabetes, like, I think we should be curious about maybe type 1 diabetes being a condition that speaks to maybe a past where consumption of blood was more of a thing, and that since it's not anymore, certain people struggle to get what they need. It's really, diabetes altogether is very weird.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't pretend to be an expert on it. And I think that probably wouldn't it's funny to me that the person that I have these feelings about is someone who's a type 1 diabetic. I didn't always know that. So I started having some of these feelings before I even knew that. And then when I found that out, I'm like, oh, like this is a thing, right? Like, especially if no one else in if his parents or his brother are not
Right.
diabetic, then that speaks to there being something unique about his role and his sort of role in the family tree that is unique in comparison. His brother was also a great tennis player, but a completely
Superb.
different kind of tennis player, right? Completely different kind of tennis player, and short,
And a lot older. No, not a lot older,
a
but more,
lot older, a lot older,
it's
right?
like 10, like 8 years older,
More
10
than
years
10
old.
years older, I think. More than 10 years. I think like yeah, I
He
think.
might be 12 or 14 years. It is a lot. Like, it's not like he's just 4 years older, different.
And then no one else in his family is super tall. Like there's
Yeah.
everything about him is different than his family. And so I don't know. Like this isn't Emily saying Alexander Zverev is a vampire, but there's some like there are. Do you ever like look at people and you're like, oh, this person is like a wolf, or this person is like a that, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When I look at him, it's very clear to me that he needs something different than what most people need, and that need is in conflict with what is considered acceptable in our modern culture. And 200, 400, 600 years ago, it may not have been, he may have, there may have been, that may have been considered acceptable. Like, you know who the gymnastics coach Bella Caroli is?
No.
He like was the coach of Mary Lou Retton and Dominique Moceanu
Okay.
and Carrie Strug and all of these people. He's a Romanian guy,
Okay.
right? And there's been obviously a lot of controversy because he had abusive coaching methods, and a lot of the sexual abuse by Larry Nasser happened at the Karoli Ranch. But he's a Romanian, but his family is from Hungary, and he like literally is from Transylvania, and like the bloodline that we refer to in pop culture as Vlad the Impaler or Dracula. It literally comes from that part of the world and that sort of genetic stock, right? So I don't know. I think we've been like it's been turned into like a cartoonish understanding of some of these things, but I for sure
I
know that these cultures existed in the past that were more towards this sort of cannibal kind of nature.
that's all fascinating, Emily, and it's because of people like you that I start to think that the myths we have are closer to our history than whatever bullshit
Yeah.
story the history is given us from the
And
victors and all
to be clear, just to be fair here, I want to be 100% fair to Alexander Zverev. I think I have some weird wolf thing going on inside of me, right? Like I think, and I even think some of the project stuff with me as a kid tapped into that. Like there's a certain location that I can go to in Chatsworth, and when I go there, I start like how like you see a wolf like
that. Wow.
salivating before they're about to kill. I feel like that. Like I feel this energy building up inside of me, and I feel those sort of behaviors like, and I'm like, wow, what the fuck is this? Right now, obviously, I'm able to manage myself and go right, but I also sometimes feel like I'm passive when I should be aggressive, and I wonder if that passivity when one should be aggressive is out of like out of a fear of like if you let the beast out, you're not going to be able to get the beast back in, right? So I think this is pretty. I don't think that any of this should be used to excuse people's poor behavior or whatever it is. But I think when we're looking at the things that people struggle with, we have to sometimes like consider their entire situation, and more effort to help people harness and manage rather than just suppress. Because I think he is suppressing himself. He is suppressing himself.
Yeah, and that suppression is a cultural condition, which,
Yep.
I can feel a bit of what you're saying, just as much as people think it's in vogue to talk about being as wild and primal as possible, not so easily done, to say nothing of whatever your, public profile is, for any of us. I mean, just to have relationship with that side of us that is primordial,
Primal.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's undeniable. There's however we got to be here, and we have a very poor understanding of where we've been as a people, as a history, as a culture. Uh, it doesn't help us heal and grow and have a better understanding if we deny that which is ageless, timeless.
And this goes in
Yeah.
one other direction too, and that the other direction is, and I see some of this in him as well, though not necessarily as distinctly as we see it in other. There's always this huge conversation about, is this female athlete really a man? Is this blah 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 blah? And there's been some the other way too. Is this man really a woman? Bruce Jenner or whatever it is, like all the kind of stuff, right? I think that there's also an occult history of androgyny and intersex, and that some of those people are really good at certain things, and certain sports would be that. I think there would be a lot of advantages to having some male characteristics and some female characteristics in some sports, right? And so I think sometimes, I know that there was like this huge movement in the alternate whatever media, where the whole like transvestigations thing, and they wanted to say everyone was the opposite sex of what they were. And I think that prefers that because it keeps people from looking at and understanding androgyny and intersex.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of athletes who are, even if it's just slightly, so that they still kind of calculate out as a woman or a man, but there's like a different thing hormonally going on in there. And when you look at Alexander Zverev, he looks like a tall, pretty woman, right? So I think he's got like this. He's got like all of these things.
He also, I'm remembering, he also used to have much more pronounced canines.
No, they're still pretty pronounced.
Okay. I wasn't, maybe a small. Well, I know Sabalenka fixed her teeth and got lip fillers in a big way, but she's allowed to do that with her millions. But Zverev, yeah.
So I think that when we look at athletes, people, it isn't just like that. Oh, all female athletes are kind of man-like. And they're not. What I'm saying is some of these same sort of ancient families that maybe had practices. Like, we don't know what things looked like back. We hear stories from history, but like, Roman times, Greek times, all of this kind of stuff, like people being more animal-like, people being more cross-gendered-like was a thing, right? That got sort of wiped out when there was this sort of heavy push towards, statism and Christianity and all of this kind of stuff. And my guess would be that the place when these ancient traditions are trying to show themselves again, the first place that they would show themselves outside of like an underground context would be in Hollywood and athletics, because there's a charisma, there's an ability, there's all of this kind of stuff, that's where we would start to notice these things again. And of course, the main things that they get us to focus on when they're saying, oh, this person's a man, this person's a woman, are Hollywood celebrities and athletes. They're not just saying, oh, like, your friend down the street or the guy who works in your mom's office. Nobody cares about that. Everything becomes noticeable first in those two arenas that have our attention, because outliers are good at those things. And outliers have some of these secondary characteristics that we've forgotten about.
That is most likely. Yeah, I mean, I do have other bullets in the gun. That seems like a punctuation.
Craziest thing she's said in a while, and so that's probably a good place to.
And that is saying a lot. Good night, folks. No, that's
Alexander Zverev, I love you and I root for you, but so this is not a judgment or anything like that. No. Yeah.
But it's a poignant punctuation to what I am certain is the most interesting tennis conversation that has happened this year. I know you had very other interesting tennis conversations in the past, and I'm thoroughly grateful that I get to host and share this conversation with you, because it is thought-provoking and stirring and historical in a way to talk about all these many interesting dynamics that happen with tennis. I mean, other things I would have asked about would have been some of the culture elements of like we said, I agree with you. US Open, not my favorite. I don't really, part of it is the quality of tennis that is slightly diminished by fatigue, injury,
and the distraction of New York City.
Very, very much so. And I'll tell you my one US Open story. I was lucky enough to have an uncle who I believe was in some capacity on the board of JP Morgan, and gifted us behind the baseline seats, probably 20 rows behind the baseline, for the 2004 men's final between Roger Federer, Leighton Hewitt.
Yeah.
And Federer,
that would have been a good one. Yeah.
Federer beat him 6-love, 7-6, 6-love in 96 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, like you said, that is boring dominance.
Hmm.
When you think about that, Leighton Hewitt was a recent world number one. I
I
mean,
mean, he had
total.
won just a few years before.
That's right.
He won the U.S. Open just a few years
Won the
before.
U.S. Open in '01
Yeah.
against Pete. Um, and like demolished Pete and baseline grinder and all that. And I mean, I'm trying to think about New York City. Whenever I watch old film, Emily, and this is, maybe we can bring us home with this. I always joke, especially when I watch tennis and the players start to walk amongst the crowd, and I just say, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" Because everyone is doing this.
Right.
And but
Totally. Yeah.
to say nothing of doing the match and they're going.
Right.
And and I know it's the same at all sporting events. I still have a lot of love for baseball. Baseball is the boredom game. Like, it's basically a picnic. You're not there, for constant,
Great to
constant
go
action.
with your family you haven't seen in a while because you can
That's
catch.
right.
Yeah.
And the chatter is encouraged. Obviously
Yeah.
tennis is a departure from that. But especially in a place like New York, like the lack of engagement, you can just feel how poor the attention is. I can only imagine what it's like for the players, but obviously I don't get caught up in the celebrity of it all. That whole spectacle, that
I wouldn't
theater.
mind seeing. So some of the parties that I go to, they is a no phone policy, right? They'll put a sticker over the camera. They can't tell you not to bring a phone because they also
Yeah,
want you to
yeah,
have Uber. So right, but they put a sticker over
that's a must.
the thing. But I wouldn't mind a stickered phone or a no phone policy at tennis. Not I don't think it has to be at everything, but at the Grand Slams, like you're fortunate to be in there. You paid a healthy amount for those tickets. Lots of people want to be there that can afford to be there. Like, be present, be here now. I don't like policing. I don't love policing. I don't like being told what
I
to do
know.
or whatever it is. But I think one of the things we're suffering from as a culture is that nobody is actually where they're at when they're there. Everyone is all right. And I think that's like fine for some things. Like, it's fine when you're like at Starbucks to not really be at Starbucks while you're at Starbucks. But when there's like a special occasion that you've made a pilgrimage to get to, which even
Yeah,
if you live in New York City, it's a pilgrimage to get out to have to go
yeah,
through the traffic and do all that kind of stuff. It's like, be there now. It would be great if we could get to that without there having to be rules, because I don't like policing. But I respect that, like, some of the parties I go to have like a no phone policy. I never take my phone out at those parties. I always,
I
yeah,
I dig that a lot. I mean, it's really such an easy way to enhance an experience. To
yeah,
uh, not that boredom is at all on the table for you in that environment, but anywhere you go, for that not to be the reflex. And obviously that's a something of a cliche discussion, especially there where it is so experiential. And I mean, God forbid you miss that last stab where Alcaraz is able to, turn, what looks like a drop shot into a 100-mile-per-hour winner. And all you hear is a gasp, or, from
right.
the crowd or anything. To say nothing of
It
when
happens
the
all the time at home. I'm looking at my phone and I miss a great play, and then of that one, of course, they don't replay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
they
know
they they
someone.
they pan to Stephen Colbert,
Correct.
gasping, and instead of
Correct.
showing the
Yes.
the
That's
bloody
exactly right.
replay. So,
Yep.
well, I have a vision someday where you and I will get to, bring the commentary to a major match, and
All
just
right.
shoot from the hip like we do. So,
If there's any hope of that ever happening, please do not title this episode "Emily Moyer Says Alexander Zverev is a Vampire."
well, that
Let that be a treat for people who listen to the rest of that. Right? Who?
I'm gonna have to. Okay, I have some editing to do because I already had that scheduled as our release. So, uh, you are magnificent and
Thank you, my
thoughtful and
friend.
supremely interesting, and thank you for sharing the most interesting tennis conversation in a long time with
All
me.
right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Emily.
so much, everybody.